to such attacks. Colonel Nell said, I quote, "With the arrival of the marked vehicle, they disappear into the structures. Witnesses don't want to identify anyone. It's like being committed by ghosts," close quotes. One young Khayelitsha resident told Dr. Gilepsy, one of the researchers who testified on these attacks, that, I quote, "I became involved in the campaign to stop vigilantism because people would be cheering when young people were killed, and no one seems to mind because they were so-called criminals. People cheering like their favorite soccer team had scored a goal," I close quote. The Commission shares the concern that the victims of these attacks are often young men who are suspected of committing offenses such as theft and housebreaking. The Commission also notes that vengeance attacks constitute criminal offenses: assault, attempted murder, and murder. Viewed as a form of retribution, they are generally and entirely disproportionate to the nature of the offense, and moreover, they sometimes target the wrong person. Seps appears to have no policy for dealing with vengeance attacks in Khayelitsha, despite the frequency with which they occur. The Commission also concludes that the 3 Khayelitsha police stations are not fully compliant with the Domestic Violence Act and the National Instruction 7 of 2009 that regulates the policing of that act. There is an established relationship between alcohol abuse and conduct crime. A high proportion of the conduct crimes in Khayelitsha happen on a weekend nights when perpetrators and victims are drunk. There are apparently 1,400 unlicensed taverns in Khayelitsha and only 35 licensed ones. The CEO of the Western Cape Liquor Authority told the Commission that licensed taverns tend to be more compliant with the rules regulating the sale of liquor than unlicensed taverns. Yet Seps does not appear to have a clear policy on the policing of unlicensed taverns in Khayelitsha. At this stage, I hand over to the Chair.
Thank you. So those are the inefficiencies, or some of the inefficiencies we found. We also identified reasons for the inefficiencies. The first reason is that at least 2 of the Khayelitsha police stations, Khayelitsha Site B and Harare, seem to be substantially understaffed. Human resources are allocated within Seps by national office on the basis of a mechanism called the THRR, the Theoretical Human Resources Requirement. Harare has the lowest police-to-population ratio in the Western Cape at 111 police per 100,000 residents, and Khayelitsha has one of the lowest at 190 per 100,000 residents. Seps could provide no explanation as to why police stations that have very high crime rates, extremely difficult policing environments, should have the lowest police-to-population ratios in the province. The Commission considers that the problem lies with the THRR's design, which appears to display a systemic bias against poor areas, particularly those inhabited by African and coloured people. The Commission notes that this problem has persisted partly because the THRR is not in the public domain and so is shielded from scrutiny. Secondly, the Commission identified management issues. Seps knows about many of the inefficiencies that the Commission has identified in the Seps units in Khayelitsha, and yet Seps management in Khayelitsha, both at the police station and the cluster office and in the province, have not been able to fix them. In this regard, the Commission notes that it has found that there are basic Seps management shortcomings in relation, for example, to first and second level inspections of registers at the 3 police stations. There are many reasons for management's failure to address the inefficiencies at the 3 police stations, and they include the fact that there's no strategic management plan in place to remedy inefficiencies, that human resource systems are weak, at least in application in Khayelitsha, and the fact that the use of information technology is noticeably suboptimal. The Seps station performance chart is another, in the view of the Commission, is another source of the difficulties. It is a sophisticated measurement tool, but a significant portion of its measurement relates to the reduction of crime, a matter by and large that both Seps witnesses and non-Seps witnesses accept is beyond the control of Seps. So it is setting an impossible mandate for police stations, as several witnesses pointed out. Moreover, the chart does not measure external indices of community satisfaction with Seps service, which means that there is no benign incentive built into the station performance chart to ensure that Seps acts to ensure that citizens are treated well. Finally, the Commission concludes that there's been a failure of oversight of Seps at the 3 police stations. One of the reasons for this has been the disagreement between Seps and DOCS as to the constitutional mandate of DOCS. The Commission has also concluded that there is a breakdown in relations between the Khayelitsha community and the Seps member stations in Khayelitsha. But we note that precisely what one means by a breakdown in a relationship is a difficult question. The Commission has taken the view that it's not necessary to use family law talk to show that there's been an irretrievable breakdown before concluding that there is a breakdown, because the very purpose, in our view, of Section 206 of the Constitution is to ensure that where a serious problem exists, it can be remedied. And if you had to wait till it was an irretrievable breakdown, you would really have to wait till it was too late to fix. So we have taken the view that a breakdown is established if there's a significant level of distrust amongst members of the community in Seps. And all the evidence that we've received suggested that this is so. Reasons for the breakdown in the view of the Commission include a range of things. Firstly, Khayelitsha's difficult history and the burden of poverty it bears, and the fact that Seps in Khayelitsha was part of that difficult history, which means it has a much harder task to build trust in the community than an organization who comes from a background of democracy and respect for human rights. Secondly, there's a widespread perception that Seps does not respond promptly to calls for assistance and does not investigate crime properly or at all. These are issues we deal with under inefficiencies, but they clearly feed into community members' attitudes to Seps. Thirdly, the community police forums established at the 3 Khayelitsha police stations and in the cluster have not contributed significantly to improving relationships between the community and Seps for a variety of reasons. Fourthly, complaints against members of Seps in Khayelitsha have not generally been dealt with thoroughly, fairly, or promptly, either by Seps or by IPID. And there is a worrying pattern whereby most complaints are found to be unsubstantiated, even where the complaints are very serious and involve injury to a member of the public caused by a Seps member. Fifthly, many Seps members do not act consistently with an understanding of policing as a service, and members of the public are often not treated with respect by Seps members. Finally, vulnerable groups such as LGBTI people and foreign nationals report particularly high levels of discourteous and discriminatory treatment by Seps members. So in the light of these 2 conclusions, that indeed there are deficiencies in Seps and that there is a breakdown, the Commission has drafted a range of recommendations. Key recommendations include that each police station adopt a community policing commitment in consultation with members of the community, in which Seps pledges, amongst other things, that its members will treat people with respect, that they undertake to respond to calls for assistance within specified times, that undertakes to provide feedback to complainants, that undertakes to conduct visible policing patrols in both formal and informal neighborhoods, and provide support to neighborhood watch patrols, and that asserts that vigilante attacks by community members constitute criminal offenses and will be dealt with as such by Seps. Secondly, we recommend the adoption of a procedural justice model of policing in Khayelitsha, in which Seps acknowledges that the manner in which policing is performed is as important as to building a relationship as trust as what Seps does, and that accordingly Seps will take steps to ensure that every interaction between a member of Seps and a member of the community will be respectful of the rights of the member of the public, that policing strategies will be assessed to ensure that they are procedurally just, and that SAPS will treat its own members fairly and with respect. Thirdly, the establishment of an oversight and monitoring team to ensure that inefficiencies identified at the police stations are eradicated. The team will comprise senior SAPS officers from the province, the police stations, a member of the provincial secretariat, as well as an independent policing expert from civil society or academia. The team should report both to the SAPS National Commissioner and to the Western Cape Legislature. Fourthly, a change management process for leadership within the Khayelitsha cluster, the Khayelitsha FCS unit, and the 3 Khayelitsha police stations to develop a 3 to 5 year strategic plan to address inefficiencies and the breakdown in relations between the community and SAPS. Sixthly, a strategic review of detective services in Khayelitsha by the Provincial Commissioner, as well as the urgent redeployment of at least 10 experienced detectives to Harare and Khayelitsha Site B police stations together, as well as backlog teams to all 3 police stations and the FCS unit. The review of the SAPS mechanism for determining human resource allocation, the THRR, must be initiated by the National Commissioner immediately. The allocation system that is adopted should be published in the SAPS annual report and available to key oversight agencies, including Parliament, the Civilian Secretariat, and provinces. Eighthly, the review of the SAPS station performance chart should be undertaken to ensure that it contains external measures of public confidence in SAPS and reduces its weighting of crime reduction targets. Ninthly, the development of a policing strategy to deal with vengeance or vigilante attacks in Khayelitsha based on the premise that such attacks constitute criminal offences and aimed at preventing such attacks. Tenthly, the establishment of a multi-sectoral task team by the province to address the problem of youth gangs in Khayelitsha. 11thly, a provincial task team to survey community attitudes to liquor licensing and unlicensed liquor outlets and the distribution of liquor generally in residential neighbourhoods, again to be undertaken by the province. We make various recommendations relating to domestic violence, largely to encourage the application of SAPS's own National Instruction of 1999, which deals with domestic violence. Then we make recommendations that SAPS appoint a strategic task team in the province to investigate the use of information technology in relation to identified issues. An important recommendation is a review of the procedures by which complaints against members of SAPS in Khayelitsha are dealt with both by SAPS and IPID, and in particular that complaints against members of SAPS in Khayelitsha be investigated by the Khayelitsha Cluster Office rather than the police stations or units operating in Khayelitsha. Another important proposal is that there be a memorandum of understanding entered into between DOCS and SAPS to facilitate DOCS carrying out its constitutional mandate to monitor police conduct and to oversee police efficiency and effectiveness, especially to regulate police station visits by DOCS and the investigation of complaints of police inefficiency by DOCS. We also recommend an investigation of the optimal use of CCTV, which should involve SAPS, particularly SAPS located in Khayelitsha, the City of Cape Town, and the Metro Police. The Commission also urgent steps to improve the physical infrastructure of the Lingaletu West Police Station and prioritises further office space for both Harare and Khayelitsha Site B. We also suggest that the Makaza Police Station be built as a matter of urgency and ensure that when the new police station is built, there will be an increase in SAPS personnel in Khayelitsha and not simply a reallocation of personnel. The Commission thus points out that we have found serious inefficiencies in the 3 Khayelitsha police stations and the Khayelitsha FCS unit. But we urge you to note that this does not mean that there are not many committed and diligent members of SAPS posted in Khayelitsha who are seeking to perform their duties to the best of their ability within available resources. The Commission accordingly requests that those who read our report should bear in mind that we focused, as we were asked to do, on identifying the inefficiencies. That there are such inefficiencies does not mean that there are not aspects of policing that are efficiently performed, nor that there are not members of SAPS of every rank who strive to provide a professional police service in Khayelitsha. It is important, in fairness, to acknowledge that there are members of SAPS who perform their duties daily in difficult circumstances here. The Commission also requests that those people who read this report, in the first place you, Madam Premier, and the members of your provincial cabinet and provincial legislature, as well as members of our opposition in the province, as well as the National Minister of Police, members of the National Cabinet and Parliament, should remember, as you formulate your response to this report, that the most important consideration in assessing this report is the need to improve the safety of the people who live and work in Khayelitsha. This is a strategic goal of both national and provincial government. It is unlikely that those strategic goals will be advanced if those who read and comment on this report forget that its recommendations are aimed solely at improving the quality of life of the people of Khayelitsha, and instead comment on the report in a manner that engages in a transient dialogue focused on political point scoring. Mr. Welcome Makele noted in his testimony that we do try and work together, but if we could just remove politics from the issues of crime and violence in Khayelitsha. Our biggest issue in Khayelitsha is involving politics in our crime and violence issues, because crime is not a political issue. It is a problem that we all experience here in Khayelitsha. A similar point was made by the Provincial Commissioner, Lieutenant General Lemoore, when he said that Seps found it hard to build relationships with the community because every political person wants to push his or her own agenda, and we are not in that. We are here in service delivery for the community. In this regard, the Commission agrees with the British NGO Liberty, which told a recent commission into policing in the United Kingdom that the political independence of the police is as important in a democracy as the political independence of the courts. Political parties come in and out of power, but those responsible for delivering public services, like the police, remain in post regardless of the ebb and flow of political opinion. This is what allows every individual in a community to feel protected by the police, regardless of their race, religion, or political affiliation. It is therefore vital that the police maintain their political independence. If the police become too closely associated with one political party, it is inevitable that faith in the police will be damaged. Close quotes. As described briefly in Chapter 3 of our report, the work of the Commission was made more difficult by high levels of political contestation about its mandate, not only at the national and provincial level, but also within Khayelitsha itself. The Commission has nevertheless sought to carry out its mandate fairly, expeditiously, and in the interest of enhancing the safety of the residents of Khayelitsha. The Commission hopes that the shared object of enhancing the safety of Khayelitsha residents will be the only object that informs the response to this report, both at national and political level and within Seps itself. We note that Seps told the Commission that it has been looking forward to the Commission's recommendations, and we welcome those members of Seps here today. We note in addition that the Provincial Commissioner tendered his apologies to us on the basis that he was busy elsewhere. But he did tell the Commission that my management accepts and welcomes any intervention from anyone to better the service to the community. And we look forward to the outcome of this commission so that we can see and evaluate how can we better the service to the various communities that we serve, because we will not only use the outcome of this commission for the police stations, but we will look broader in the Western Cape itself. At this stage, we wish to note that this campaign to establish a commission of inquiry was ignited by the brutal murders of several young women here in Khayelitsha who were lost to their families, their loved ones, and their friends in the flush of their youth. Since we have learnt of the murders of Zoliswa Nkonyana, Nandipa Magege, Lorna Mlofana, we have learnt of the murders of many others. Each leaves a circle of loss and pain. To name but a few: Andilian Cholo, Letabo Tosholo, Polise Tame, Andisiwe Msongewa, Ntombozi Nkhono, Tulani Nkhono, Alude Nkhono, and Sipho Settler Mgadla. Please may we ask you to rise for a minute to remember them. The Commission notes that the complainant organisations called for a partnership with Seps to address the problems of crime and violence in Khayelitsha. Phumeza Mlungwana said, "I think all communities should acknowledge that Seps cannot do this alone." And Funeka Soldat of Free Gender told the Commission how important Seps is to the gay and lesbian community. "They are the most important people in our lives," she said. This was also acknowledged by the task team established by the late Lieutenant General Shabalala and led by Major General Rapudi, who said, "It is of fundamental importance to acknowledge that the community is still reaching out to Seps and has a dire need to forge mutually beneficial partnerships. Seps should embrace the opportunity created to reach out to the community." As commissioners, we think the task team was right. We hope that our investigation into the problems of policing in Khayelitsha will provide a solid foundation for a new partnership between the people of Khayelitsha and Seps. We are sure that that is what the people of Khayelitsha hope will emerge from this commission, and we also think it is what Seps hopes for as well. In conclusion, Advocate Bikoli and I would like to note that as commissioners, we only had a small team to assist us. 2 evidence leaders, Nazreen Bawa and Lihle Sidaki on my left, Amanda Dissel, its secretary, and an administrator, a post first filled by Ronald Menwe and then by Kangalani Kauza, also on my left. To say that all these people went the extra mile is an understatement. They worked day and night and weekends to make sure that our work could be completed expeditiously, but without compromising the breadth or depth of our investigations. We thank them for their dedication, imagination, and sheer hard work. But it is as important to note, and we pertinently draw this to the attention of Seps, that although we had a tiny team, there were many people from all walks of life who, out of their concern for the safety of people of Khayelitsha and their commitment to the idea of a democratic, responsive, open and accountable police service, helped us at every step in the road. Almost no doors were closed to us. Nearly every time we asked, assistance was generously provided. We are sure that if Seps and the people of Khayelitsha ask for that assistance, they too will find a willingness to help. South Africa is blessed with a committed civil society, engaged and thoughtful research scholars, and remarkable goodwill in many places in government and in civil society. In building the partnership between Seps and the community of Khayelitsha, these resources will be of tremendous value, and we encourage both Seps and the people of Khayelitsha to draw upon them. In closing these remarks, we record our hope that the vision set out in the preamble of our Constitution may, as we go forward, be brought a little nearer for the people of Khayelitsha. A vision in which the quality of all citizens may be, quality of life of all citizens may be improved, and the potential of each person freed. I'd like to present you Madam Premier. Madam Premier, it will be an opportune moment if you'd like to make a few remarks.
Thank you very much indeed, Judge O'Regan. Thank you very much indeed, Advocate Bikoli. Thank you to your team, Advocate Bawa, Advocate Sidaki. Ms. Amanda Dissel, and then, of course, Mr. Khayelitsha, that I haven't met before, but it's very good to have you here. Thank you very much for the extraordinary work you've done. I would also like to acknowledge General Dladla of the South African Police Service. He's a Deputy Commissioner in this province. I know him well. We've got to know each other very well over a while, and I greatly appreciate his being here today and his cooperation with us through this whole challenging exercise. I'd like to thank all the advocates that worked on this very important project and the legal teams. Amagweta, I will call you all, because that is a good collective noun for lawyers. And I would like to thank the NGOs and civil society organizations that brought these issues to us in a format required by the Constitution. I would like to thank Ms. Stewart and the legal team in the province who guided me every step of the way to ensure that we complied with the Constitution and the law in pioneering a Commission of Inquiry that has not yet been done before in this format in South Africa, and certainly not under this clause of the Constitution. And most especially, I would like to thank the people of Khayelitsha, who came in very large numbers to assist the Commission, and to assist the Commission in establishing the facts, and to try and reach findings and recommendations that would help improve policing and thereby help improve the lives of everybody in Khayelitsha. And it's very important for me to stress that oversight need not be adversarial. Oversight is there under the Constitution in many, many spheres in order to help improve the quality of a service. And we've been working very hard to try and give content to oversight because it's a nebulous concept. But one of the tools that the Constitution gives to oversight is the tool of a Commission of Inquiry, as long as it is not used as a political lever to score points. And that was critically important to avoid that at all times, and to use that provision in the Constitution in good faith. And that we genuinely tried to do and sought to do, which is why it took us a long time and sometimes a frustratingly long time to set it up. But ultimately, the Constitutional Court agreed that we were acting within our powers, and we made a very important emphasis of the fact that this was to assist the police in improving their service to Khayelitsha so that we could work together in ensuring that everybody in this province and hopefully everybody in this country gets the best service that we can provide at every level of government, from every branch of government, in every way possible. And in this context, Judge and Advocate, I think that this commission will prove to be a watershed in our country, because you have made very practical findings and recommendations that are implementable. Some will take additional resources, others will take new systems, all will take intergovernmental cooperation and working together with communities, with the police, with the Department of Community Safety, with all spheres of government to implement the provisions of oversight that are now encapsulated in our Community Safety Act. And that is the second part that gives breadth and depth to this concept of oversight. And in this context, I'd like to thank our provincial minister very much, Dan Plato, his head of department, Dr. Gilbert Lawrence, Advocate Gerber, Mr. Morris, and many other people who've put a lot of time and effort into thinking about oversight and how it can be applied constructively and cooperatively to ensure that we're picking up the problems and have mechanisms to rectify them. And I would very much like to strongly underscore a point that was made both by Advocate Piccoli and Judge O'Regan, which is the independence of the police service from any political influence. The police service must only account to the Constitution and the law. And in that context, serve every person. We are a government elected for a certain period of time, and in that context we have a right to govern, we have a right to make laws, but those laws can never be unconstitutional. And the accountability of the police is to the Constitution, and part of that Constitution provides for the government of the day to have oversight. And that is what we're doing, because those are the checks and balances which are sometimes very, very fine-tuned in our Constitution to ensure that people get the right kind of service, that only checks and balances and oversight and independence of state institutions from the political party that governs at a particular time can secure. And if we can achieve this through the mechanisms of the Constitution that we celebrate here today, it will be an enormous step forward for the whole of South Africa. And I'm really hoping that these findings will be able to be used by many, many communities in policing, everywhere. Because although Khayelitsha and the NGOs that operate in Khayelitsha, I nearly had a Freudian slip to say govern Khayelitsha, but the NGOs that operate in Khayelitsha and that support the community in Khayelitsha actually could make the first case that passed muster with the people of Khayelitsha to meet the requirements of the Constitution for a commission. But that doesn't mean to say that every community will not benefit from this. I think every community will benefit from this, and we will certainly look at implementing the recommendations. In particular, the commissioners have identified two key tasks for the provincial government. And those are that we need to establish a multi-sectoral task team to address the problems of youth gangs in Khayelitsha, and that this must be convened by the Provincial Department of Community Safety. So if you thought your job of oversight was ending, Minister, it's only just beginning. And that is a big challenge because we know how deeply rooted gang culture is in this province. And hopefully in Khayelitsha it is not too late to turn it around. And so we will take that recommendation very, very seriously indeed. And then the second one is a provincial task team to survey community attitudes to liquor licensing, unlicensed liquor outlets, and the distribution of liquor generally in residential neighborhoods, with a view to developing a policy to regulate liquor outlets. Now, this is a touchy subject in the Western Cape, as everybody knows. And every time we try to do something in terms of the law and the regulations, we end up regulating the licensed outlets, whereas those that operate under the radar of the law and regulations continue and even multiply. And that defeats the purpose. It doesn't help to close down Long Street, where everyone has a license, and many people, in fact, everyone also complains to the Premier, and not do anything about liquor outlets in residential areas where communities often do not want to have them. And so I think it's a very good proposal that we do a survey of the communities themselves, and on the basis of those we get, based on a reliable survey, that we can regulate liquor outlets, which is not going to be easy to do, because anybody benefiting from lack of regulation does not like regulation. But we have to have policies that are implemented that benefit everyone, and that we balance rights and responsibilities properly in formulating regulation and applying it. I note that in this report, the abuse of alcohol is given a lot of attention. And there is no doubt that alcohol and substance abuse generally account for by far the majority of crime in this province. And no government can simply ignore that. It is not a personal choice and not a personal decision when so many people suffer the consequences in families, amongst people who know each other, and then also amongst complete strangers in the street. And there the government has a duty to act, and we will most certainly do that. So we support the Commission's recommendation that a multi-sectoral task team consisting of a range of stakeholders, including the South African Police Service, the National Prosecuting Authority, the National Department of Justice, a number of provincial departments, the City of Cape Town, Madam Mayor, school principals and civil society, be established to draw up a strategic plan to address youth gangs and also their association with illicit substances, which tends to be the root of all gang formation in this province. We already engaged very strongly in expanding after-school activities, as well as diversionary programs for youth at risk and strengthening our criminal justice system. The Western Cape Liquor Act that we passed has been found wanting because, as I say, it goes after the law-abiding citizens and mainly allows those who are intent on breaking the law anyway to get off without consequence. And so we need to look at what the Commission has identified as 1,400 illegal liquor outlets in Khayelitsha, which are the root of so many of the problems, especially of violent crime in this community. And we will be establishing that task team to look at how we do that based on the views and requirements of the communities that are so badly affected by that. We will also be looking very carefully at the Commission's recommendations that the South African Police Service should enter into a memorandum of understanding, which is a very good idea. Memorandum of understanding with the Department of Community Safety to facilitate an agreement on what it means to carry out our constitutional duties, so that you know exactly what is meant by it, and so that we know exactly what is meant by it. And we both have a cooperative understanding of those requirements. The Commission has suggested that the MOU should include regulations on a number of issues, including visits by departmental officials to police stations, as well as unannounced visits, arrangements for the department to be allowed to inspect dockets that have been closed, and that together with our watching briefs can make an enormous difference. The manner in which it can investigate complaints against police officers and a closer collaboration between the provincial government and the Seps on specific safety challenges, including youth gangs, school safety, and alcohol use. It fits in very closely with our own Community Safety Act, so we're hoping, General Dladla, that we'll be able to take this forward with you and with General Lamour. We certainly can have a long and fruitful discussion in formulating and signing that memorandum of understanding so that we can work cooperatively and do what it needs to maintain law and order in the most effective way while serving the people of Khayelitsha, the vast majority of whom also want a context of law and order, as we can say about everybody in the Western Cape. I will soon be making an announcement about the appointment of a police ombudsman in this province, who will in many ways be able to continue the work that Judge O'Regan and Advocate Pikoli started in the commission in Khayelitsha in a circumscribed form, in that the ombudsman will be able to take complaints, investigate them, and make recommendations. And we're hoping that that will build on the very deep understanding that has been garnered from this focus and this deep, deep drilling down into the challenges faced by policing in Khayelitsha. So with that all that is left for me is to say thank you, that we have taken an enormous step in cooperative governance, in working with civil society, in working with citizens and residents who depend on government services to live in safety. To all of the government representatives, the lawyers, members of civil society, my colleagues, to you, Advocate Piccoli and Judge O'Regan, for an extraordinary amount of work, exceptionally well done in record time, that has created a resource that will resonate throughout the country and form the basis of a systematic improvement in the South African Police Service and its relationship with the communities they serve. Thank you very much.
Sile komishoni njengoba isihleli apha zonke ezinyanga sivile inhlungu yenu sibonile ngamehlo ukusokola kwenu sizivele ngendlebe zethu kungoko ke sinethemba ukuba uzabakho umuhluko kwindlela eniphilisana ngayo namapolisa aseKhayelitsha kwaye silapha sile commission siza kunikhumbula kakhulu kuba ixesha lethu liphelile ngoku apha eKhayelitsha kodwa ke sifunde indawo ezininzi endlovini enkanini esi-section zinkumbulo ke ezawuhlala zikhona okusemqoka into ebalelekileyo ukuba abantu baseKhayelitsha namapolisa aseKhayelitsha basebenzisane babambane ngezandla lonto leyo iyakwenzela kuba uhle kakhulu ulophulo lomthetho apha eKhayelitsha ubugebenga buhle ukudlwengulwa komama nabantwana buhle yiyo lonto ke kubalulekile uba nisebenzisane kakhulu kwakhona ke ndinomama uOregan uKate sithi mazenethole
Right, everybody, that brings us to the end of these proceedings. We cordially invite everybody to join us for tea outside at the back of the hall. Thank you very much.
Khayelitsha residents, frustrated with lack of policing, take the law into their own hands. About 20 suspected criminals were killed in the area last year. The cases of vigilantism prompted Western Cape Premier Helen Zille to set up an inquiry into Khayelitsha police. Police Minister Nathi Mthethwa approached the Western Cape High Court to deem the inquiry invalid. He argued that Zille overstepped her constitutional powers as Premier by appointing a commission that would subpoena police members to give evidence. But the court did not rule in his favor. Despite continued protests by civil organizations and residents, Mthethwa took the matter to the Constitutional Court and lost. Zille and activist group have welcomed the court's decision.
This is about trying to improve policing on the ground for people who have negative experiences. This is the government of the Western Cape exercising its constitutional responsibility to work with the police to make policing better.
It means a lot to the people of Khayelitsha who have been victims of crime, who have been sometimes mistreated by the police. What we'll do now is get the word to the people of Khayelitsha.
The police ministry says it will cooperate with the inquiry.
Well, as a ministry, we respect the decision of the Constitutional Court and we abide by it because this is the final arbitration in terms of the legal process.
The Commission will now meet to determine when public hearings, which were suspended last year, will resume. Zikhona Chona.